appropriate time. So I want to thank you for that. I also want to, before we get started, like to ask, I'd like to ask our board chairwoman, who is here present, Mrs. Maria Gutierrez, to say a few welcoming remarks. Mrs. Gutierrez?
Thank you, Superintendent Fernandez. Good evening, Central Region stakeholders, especially the parents. I hope that tonight you will listen to the presentation that the Department of Education, under the supervision of Superintendent Fernandez and the management team, of the plan for the opening of the school, new school year. I know almost everyone out there is really concerned about how is DOE going to handle this. Are they going to guarantee safety to their kids? Let me tell you, we are all concerned. We're all in this together. So this is a time now tonight and to ask the questions. They may not have the answer right away for you, but I'm sure they're going to do their best. It's an opportunity that I want to thank the superintendent and the recovery task force for holding this virtual meeting. I know it's hard if we were to have it down at any place because of the public health orders, but still this is an opportunity because I know that I was checking the participants and there's a lot of you. So thank you for that. This is also what they're doing in the United States, in all the states, because they're going virtual. So please, we want to hear from you. This is the reason for this presentation tonight. Thank you to all of you. And we hope that we will be able to get your comments and how can the department help you to lessen that worries that you have, because we are also very concerned of the safety of our students, especially in the public school. So thank you, Superintendent Fernandez, and you may proceed. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Gutierrez. We also have our parent representative on the board, Ms. Carla Borja, who has really been very active in making sure that we engage our parents and our PTOs. I wanted to just give her an opportunity to welcome all of you today. Ms. Borja?
Hafa fellow parents, thank you for taking the time this evening to be with us. Also on this call, I'm seeing that we have a lot of administrators and some of our fellow DOE Central Office employees. So please ask all the questions you want. We'll take any and every question. You can put it in the chat. If you're on Facebook, you can type it into Facebook as well. We do have someone monitoring both chats. So once again, Hafa, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
All right, thank you, Ms. Borja. So before we get started, when we do have a presentation that will be a brief presentation to walk you through the general plan of action leading into the start of the school year, I just wanted to, in addition to welcoming you, let you know that of course on Monday we had a similar meeting with our northern schools and our northern school PTOs and parents. So what we're going to try to do is to incorporate. There were some questions similar questions that were asked during that meeting. And so I know during the presentation, we'll try to see if we can answer them within the context of our presentation so that we can start to get to some new questions and issues that need to be clarified. And in addition to that, like I said, we have about 236 participants, many parents. We do have administrators who are here paying attention to make sure that they understand any questions that are particular to their schools. And also, I'm sure some teachers and of course our deputies who have been leading this effort as well to get to a reopening. Like Mrs. Gutierrez said, safety is the priority. And I think when we did our survey of about 6,000 parents who responded, it really came out and showed that safety was by far the biggest concern about the reopening of schools. And so taking that to heart, and again, also as myself as a parent of two public school students, taking that to heart, we wanted to make sure that we assured you that we are not going to open unless we are able to meet the safety requirements as set forth by the governor and by public health, and also following the guidelines of the Centers for Disease Control, which is in large part where we drew a lot of our opening guidelines and parameters. We also know that, and as you know, that we are in the process of getting all the PPEs in, the face masks, the hand sanitizers, cleaning supplies. That also is another prerequisite before we open. So I want you to make sure you're clear that we're not just going to open because we set a date. We're going to open only if we can say that we've got all the safety parameters in place and can provide that assurance to all of you. In addition, because of the safety issues, distance learning has become a major discussion point. I know we'll get into that, as well as the third component, which is our social emotional well-being of our employees and our kids. So those are really the three areas that we'll talk about in our presentation: safety, the distance learning or the models of learning, and then some of the preparations to make sure that our kids and our employees are ready to get back from a mental health standpoint. So with that said, once we get to the presentation, we're happy to take all your questions. I'm going to keep this to an hour and a half, which was what we did on Monday. That was a lot of time to really spend some time on all the questions and spend some time in that discussion. And then if we're unable to answer all the questions, we definitely are planning to take the unanswered questions and put them into our future information releases to parents and to stakeholders. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead now and turn it over. I believe two of our principals, Marianne Lujan, principal of Jose Rios, as well as Dr. Ajadi Rossetti, who was a principal of JP Torres Success Academy. I think they're going to take us through the presentation tonight. So let me turn it over to them. Thank you.
They'll still be able to answer your questions.
Hello and good evening to all our Central Schools stakeholders. My name is Ashley Rossetti. I'm the principal of JP Torres Success Academy. And joining me is Mrs. Marianne Lujan, the principal of Jose Rios Middle School. Thank you for joining us this evening as we share with you what you and your children will expect to see when we reopen our schools for school year 2020-2021. As a reminder, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please utilize the chat feature that we will be monitoring, and we will get to the questions after the presentation. Mrs. Lujan?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. We do appreciate that you're here and have any questions. Again, we will be sure to answer all the questions as we go through. Let me just set up one section on my slideshow. Sorry. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm hosting and
As you see, sometimes we have technical difficulties too, so please bear with us.
okay, there, I apologize. Here we go. Not letting me turn.
Okay, at this time, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and have the actual host receive the slides. So if you can give us a few minutes. Okay, we're going to start talking about the slides. I know that we're having difficulty here, but one of the things that we wanted to ensure is that the Guam Department of Education is preparing for the school reopening, and it took several precautionary measures to ensure all the student safety. The current guidance provided by the governor's executive orders, the Department of Public Health and Social Services, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the World Health Organization, as well as our superintendent and the Guam Education Board. They've made all of these assurances to use as guidance to ensure all students are safe. As you are aware, this information is subject to change. In preparation for the school year, all students, employees, and visitors are going to be required to wear face masks before entering the campus to ensure that our students are safe. The students will also have to wear a mask before boarding the bus to and from school to ensure our students are safe on the route to school and then as they get here. There are hygiene and cleaning protocols that are critically important to combating the spread of the COVID-19 virus. All employees and students are required to observe a whole bunch of protocols. And one of the things we want to stress is some of the instructional day will be used to reinforce and teach these protocols to ensure the students who are face-to-face and on-site are safe. These protocols include wearing a face covering while they're on campus and participating in techniques such as proper hand washing techniques, the stopping of the spread of germs. We're going to be sharing, asking questions about whether or not they have actual symptoms of COVID-19 by asking them a set of questions. Sorry, as you can see, the screen has popped back up. And Ms. Lujan, I am now on slide 4 on what you can expect. Sorry for that difficulty. And now I'll have Ms. Lujan take over.
Okay, my apologies. We're going to go ahead and go back to the section that we left off with the mask. I know Dr. Rossetti has shared that part of the things that we wanted to make sure that all our stakeholders know is that entering into the campus, students, employees, and visitors will need to adhere to wearing the face mask. There is a face mask that we are not allowed, and this is based on Department of Public Health Social Services in our outline, and those are the masks that have the vents that were not approved. Temperature checks would also take place. If you can see here on the temperature checks, we have passive screening. And this passive screening is what we're asking parents and employees as well as visitors. Before you leave to come onto campus, please check your temperature. If you're not feeling well, don't come to the school campus. Give us a call the school that you are at. Speak with your healthcare provider. Active screening, this is the section that we shared, and this will be what will happen at the school sites. Temperatures will be checked for all individuals that enter the campus. If the employee, the student, have a temperature of 104 or higher, have any of these criteria, coughing, vomiting, diarrhea, new rash, are identified through contact tracing with DPHSS for exclusion, or have traveled off island, those are students, those are employees and visitors that will not be allowed on the campus. Hygiene and cleaning protocols are critically important. Hygiene and cleaning protocols are critically important in combating the spread of the COVID-19 virus. All employees and students are required to follow and observe the following protocol. We want to make sure, again, like I've shared, always having the face mask. If you do wear a face shield, you are still required to wear the face mask with your face shield. Participate in trainings that will help identify, and all students will go through some training on how to wash their hands, how to stay safe with the new protocols that we have in place, proper hand washing techniques, how to stop the spread of germs, and also to identify symptoms of COVID if they have any feelings, they're not feeling well, and what to expect and what we will be expecting from them when they come to the school site. Employees will always be reminded and reminding the students to maintain positive and best hygiene practices, avoid close contact with people that are sick, and again, if you're not feeling well, to make sure that you stay home. Students, especially the younger ones, will be introduced into proper ways to cough using your elbow or tissue, how to throw the trash, your used napkins away, avoid touching their eyes, nose, and mouth, washing hands frequently with soap and water, utilizing the 20-second count, and in the event that you are not able to wash your hands, using hand sanitizers with 60 to 95% alcohol base, and also utilizing alcohol spray. Disinfecting areas. In the schools, we are developing procedures to make sure that all areas are disinfected. A higher opportunity of them to maintain a clean hygiene. Students will also be participating, and teachers will incorporate the use of, wiping down your desk as student tables as you leave your classroom or as you start. Students will also be given optional items that they can bring in, personal hand sanitizer, personal alcohol spray, also the disinfectant wipes, personal face shields if they would like to utilize the face shields in addition to their masks. Okay, thank you. Dr. Rossetti?
Okay, one of the things you'll notice is campus access. What we're looking at is controlled entry points so that we have a flow of traffic, that we're able to provide security and safety for the students on the campus. We're looking at new visitor procedures so that we can have individuals who are visiting campuses check in with school personnel at the main gate with the temperature screening to take place. Again, if there is an elevated temperature, students will not be, or visitors will not be allowed onto the campus. What we're asking our guests to do is to contact the school to schedule an appointment if you need to come in and speak with anyone in the school before coming on campus. This will eliminate a large crowd and a large number of students or visitors and guests on the campus at one given time. We are also implementing campus physical changes as well. Things you'll see are decreased capacity signage to ensure physical and social distancing. And we use those terms interchangeably because we want our students to be able to socialize, but maintain a physical distance. We're following the guidance from the CDC to ensure 6 feet in between all of our students, employees, visitors, and staff. There will be signs posted throughout the campuses. We will also have hand washing stations that are encouraged so that students are able to wash their hands between transitions, sit 6 feet apart, and there will be clear marked directional arrows so students will know which direction to go to prevent collision with other students and close contacting, which will also include the physical component in the cafeteria. So please be mindful of those of those signs, I apologize. The decreased capacity, we've grouped students with a grouping schedule. For example, you'll see Group A, Group B, and Group C on the slide are a division of the school population into thirds. The sample population would be, for example, is 1,200, which would mean 400 students in groups of 3 labeled Group A, Group B, Group C, which will be divided by students' alphabetical order on their last name. And so a grouping schedule, if you remember, we divided into thirds, and the colors of red, yellow, and blue would be the 3 different groups. The groups will attend school on a rotational basis Fridays would not be an on-campus day for students who are face-to-face. There will be no students, and those would be student support Fridays to support the home learning students, to support parents who might have questions, or to support those online students who may need interventions, and it would be designed by the school based on their unique needs for their students. High schools and middle schools will return to traditional schedule instead of block scheduling to maximize the instructional time. Okay. There are 3 models of learning, and I want to reiterate that this is a safety strategy to accommodate parents and students who are not ready for on-campus attendance. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed education forever. It shut down schools all over the world, so Guam is not unique. It gave rise to distance or remote learning, whereby teachers they have the occurrences of remote learning and on various digital platforms. When we reopen our school, there will be 3 models of learning that are available to the students and families to select. The 3 instructional modes will support 2 groups of students: those who are able to come to school for face-to-face and attend their classes, and those who are not, for medical reasons, for fear of infection, or for personal reasons. Under normal circumstances, the ideal would have the 3 models supporting each other at one time. But because of COVID, what's happened is we now have 3 different models, which we're going to hopefully continue even after COVID-19, so students are able to access the curriculum on various models. The students who opt for face-to-face learning will attend classes on their designated days based on their cohort, which we shared in the previous slide. While on campus, they must adhere to all the necessary health precautions, such as wearing the face covering, temperature checks, physical distancing, and also responding to the questions on whether or not they're experiencing any of the COVID symptoms. Students who are not able to come to school will participate in the home learning option and will be supported based on their connectivity. Students with reliable internet access and a device such as a computer or a laptop or a tablet, they will have access to the curriculum and submit their work via the online or digital learning platform. Students who do not have connectivity or a device will access the curriculum by picking up packets and returning the completed work to school. One of the questions that has consistently come up is, can parents switch models of learning? The models of learning and switching is discouraged until the end of a grading period, so it gives teachers time to work with their students, the schools time to plan and involve their students, and reassign classes based on the face-to-face format, but it also gives the student the opportunity to finish and complete any work that was assigned so they can receive their assignments and have consistent learning. Please also know DOE is very flexible. If for any reason the change needs to happen and we can't wait until the end of a grading period, we ask that you notify the school's administration and meet with the principal so that those certain allowances and accommodations can be made, okay? That sums up the models of learning. And at this time, we can maybe go ahead and look through the chat. I know I've seen there's a whole bunch of information popping up. Are there any questions that need to be answered? And hopefully we have our deputies on site. Also on site, because this is now our new format of site. And what we can do is have them look and respond to any questions that they may see trending throughout the presentation.
We'd also like again to apologize for the technical difficulty that we had with the freeze screen, and we thank you for your time and your attendance here. This shows your support for your child and the importance it is to make sure that we try to enter the school safely and also ensure that their transition socially, emotionally is all met academically as well. Thank you.
Okay, if I could, at this point, there are some questions there are a lot of questions actually from this group, and we're going to try to get to them as we work through this. But let me make sure I clarify the picture when it comes to the number of students who we anticipate to actually be attending school on a day-to-day basis. You know, we provided parents with 3 options. One was 100% at home online. The other was 100% at home with hard copy lessons for those who may prefer to have hard copies or who don't have access to internet or to a laptop or so forth. And then the third option is face-to-face classes on an alternating schedule. So that means that if you're going to go to class, you will come on one day, and then on for the next 2 days, you would be at home, and that would be a form of distance learning while you're at home. So right now, based on the survey or the registrations that we've collected, the way it looks at even our largest schools is that we don't anticipate, let's just say at the high school level, more based on the information we have to date, more than 150 students on any given day at a high school, right? So a high school is normally 1,800, 1,900 students. The number of parents and students who said they would like to come to school, and then of course dividing that group into 3 cohorts really reduces the population at the school. So at the elementary schools per day, based on our current data, it could be around 50 to 60 students on a campus that would normally accommodate 700, 800 students. So there is a huge reduction. What that tells us is that, of course, there is a big concern about safety, which is leading 65% of all of our students preferring to be at home in one form or another. At the high school and middle school level, that number is about 70%, and only 30% wanting to participate in face-to-face learning at school. In the elementary level, it's 60% who prefer to stay home and 40% who would like to go to school. So with that said, those smaller numbers are going to allow us to more closely supervise students on campus, to better control the traffic of students moving in and about the campus, and again, help us to reinforce a lot of the hygienic practices, making sure kids wash their hands, maintain the distancing, and so forth. So I just wanted to make sure, so it's not simply taking a school of 1,200 and saying 400 students are going to be there every day. Actually, it's a lot lower. And I just wanted to let you know that based on the information we have at this point. And hopefully that will give some assurance for those who want to send their kids to school but are kind of concerned about the ability to watch, especially the younger kids as they move about.
Sir, did you want me to go through the questions and we can answer them together? There's a lot of questions. I can start from the top.
Definitely. Thank you, Erica.
Okay, so the first question was wondering, the parents had a deadline to choose the option of learning before this presentation. What if after the presentation I wanted to change my choice? Would we be able to do that? And the answer is yes, you may be able to communicate with your school and make that appropriate change.
Hey, Erica.
Yes.
Erica, this is Joe.
Yes.
I've been going through the chat. Maybe do you think we can do it this way? I can answer easily the curriculum questions, because there's a couple that I can answer kind of all at once.
Okay.
So maybe do you mind
fine.
if I just went ahead and do that? It won't be in order,
Sure,
but I think it's touching the curriculum pieces.
most of the questions. Okay,
So,
got it.
Yeah. So thanks, Ms. Erica spoke about the changing of the model. So yes, absolutely. So as Dr. Ashley also noted, we allow that there will be opportunities for parents to request to change the model. Obviously, because it's an accommodation, like that's the point of having those models to begin with. It's really trying to respond to the request of parents. So the only thing that we ask, and this is really for the benefit of the child, the student, is as much as possible, if you are able to wait towards the end of a grading period, that would really help, because as just like the teachers have to get to know the students have to get to know the teachers, and if the schedule is set up in a way where changing the model would require changing the teacher, that's going to be problematic. Just like it would be in a regular school year when you change from teacher to teacher. In fact, during a regular school year, we tend to discourage that, changing to a different teacher in the middle of a grading period, simply because work has already been done, the teacher has already gotten to know the student, and there will be other challenges related to that. But of course, if there's circumstances that are beyond the parents' control, students' control, and there absolutely needs to be a change, we will accommodate that. Just simply call the school and work on that with them. The second question is, what happens if students, our children, do not have the same last name? So the purpose of the last name, as they noted, is really trying to get families and siblings into the same group. So if you're living in the same household, or they have brothers and sisters, we're trying to get them into A, B, and C. Now, the easiest way is doing that through the last name. But if the children do not have the same last name, or the family members in the household, sometimes they're cousins or extended family members, if they don't have the same last name, all you need to do is simply call the school, let them know who all these the children are, and they will work to get them into the same grouping. This will also work for the different grade levels. So our different regions, the districts, are collaborating with each other. So they communicate from elementary, middle, and high. And as much as possible, they will identify those family members, elementary, middle, and high school. But a lot of times it's going to require the family to actually disclose that. So they would have to call the school and let them know that they have siblings that they would like to have on the same day. I also noticed that there was a question about families wanting to do more than one mode of learning. So just understand that the model of learning is really, we need to clarify that singularly so that the student gets scheduled, so that we know what the student's actual schedule is, if it's an online schedule, if it's a hard copy schedule, or if it's a face-to-face schedule, so that there can be consistent supports provided to that particular student, and they will actually be assigned a teacher. So if you're a home learning student, that doesn't mean it's just the students at home and then the school. Your students will actually be assigned a teacher as well. So they will have a specific teacher, and they will have a schedule, and they will be able to communicate with that particular teacher. Now, differentiate that between strategies for communication. So some families have asked, we have some computer access, but it's not very consistent. Or this is a common problem or common challenge, is that yes, we have good internet access, we have a good computer, and we even have a printer, but there's multiple kids in the house that are using the same computer. So, we want to also have the hard copy. Can we do online and hard copy as well? Well, the solution to that is choose the hard copy, because just because you're in a particular model, that doesn't mean you can't access the resources of the other models. If you're an online student or of an online model, then the intent is to be 100% online. Like we want that to be, completely electronic. You shouldn't have to come to the campus. You shouldn't have to, worry about coming to the school to meet with a teacher. I mean, everything should be, done online for your benefit, actually at the request of the families. But if you do want, if you have trouble printing out the material and it's too much, just simply, call the teacher and, email them and make an arrangement to have those materials copied for you, and then they can be picked up. But my recommendation would be to choose the hard copy piece, so that way you will always get a copy of the material on a regular basis that you can take home. There was a question about how that model is going to go. We have to be very frank, especially with the home learning models, and especially with the home learning model hard copy. A lot of this is going to require very strong engagement with the students themselves, as well as the parents, because it's a lot of it is almost independent work with the school providing support. So with the home learning hard copy, its materials and assignments will be provided, on a weekly basis. The families will take that work home. They would do that work throughout the week. They would turn it in kind of in some systematic way. We're asking the schools to be very strategic in this, so we don't want families to have to come back and forth, at random times, to pick up and drop off work. That wouldn't be very efficient or effective. So there is going to be some type of regular sequence where they pick up the materials, They drop off the materials, and and they have a way to communicate with the teacher for support or any questions. Now, also just keep in mind that just because you're in the hard copy version, that doesn't mean you can't utilize online tools. We're still going to have a website. We're still going to have lessons that are posted on the website. The teachers are still going to have emails. So if you have some internet access, you can still email your work in. You don't have to physically drop it. So you're able to really utilize multiple platforms of communication for to interact with the school. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I saw one of the last items there was hold on, let me kind of look through that. Is how often will the students have to meet for the online support, or I'm sorry, the online classes, or even the hard copy classes? Well, a lot of this, as I mentioned, is going to be almost independent work, where you have to set up a schedule at home, kind of for yourself, where students are working on the assignments in a systematic way. The schools will set up several video conference sessions, where they would have a schedule where they would meet with the teacher. Our rule of thumb is basically at least once a week for every course that a student is taking. So at elementary school, they're taking 6 classes. That's language, reading, math, science, and social studies, and tomorrow. In middle school, there's 7 classes, and in high school, there's 6 classes. So, the rule of thumb is basically 1 video conference with the whole class a week, with a maximum of 3 video conferences with the whole class. Now, the teacher can also assign and have small group sessions. So just because you have that one large group session, that doesn't mean there isn't going to be opportunities to meet with the teachers in smaller groups, where there may be groups of 5 that the teacher meets kind of on a regular basis. So when the schools get their final data from the models of learning and they set up their master schedule, they will share with all of their students, what their classes are and what times those video sessions are going to be. But, again, the home learning model is going to be somewhat very independent. So the families are going to have to establish some type of schedule at home, so that there's a systematic, consistent way that the students work on the assignments, and then access the supports from the schools. The schools are prepared to be very responsive. They're going to be tracking all of the students who are participating, especially for the schools that have a substantial number of students who are doing the home learning and hard copies. If you're, especially with schools of over 50% of those teachers, chances are you're going to have a team of teachers that are teaching online or doing hard copies that are at 100%. So it's not like they're going to be competing with the students who are in school. I mean, there are going to be teams of teachers that could potentially be accessing and working with students on a regular basis throughout the week. So Erica, those are the main corrections to the others as they come up.
Thank you,
Joe,
Mr. Sanchez.
Yeah, Joe, why don't you go ahead and tackle? I saw there were some questions about technology for students and training for parents regarding technology.
Okay, so yeah, I'm just trying to look through the chat too. So just excuse me if I missed some of it. But so we're looking at phases with regards to implementation. We know that, well, first of all of our families, including our staff and our students and everybody, we've gone through something very traumatic. In fact, we continue to go through something very traumatic for the island. And it's very hard to predict how that's going to go moving forward. But one thing we know for sure is that as schools open, we know that this is not going to be kind of like a regular scenario. So it's not, okay, everybody come to school and, just immediately go into the work. We know that there's a substantial amount of time where our teachers are going to need to build those relationships with the students as well as their parents. Now, for the home learning group, the individuals who are not going to be physically coming onto the campus, we know that this is going to be a challenge. So we are expecting to spend a substantial amount of time building our relationships with you, building our relationships with your children, our students, and making sure that there's that homeschool connection whether it be making sure that teachers understand what your technology capacity is at home, making sure that you have all your questions answered. We want the families to be very comfortable. We want to make sure that our contact information is updated. So we want to make sure that we know our family's contact information so we can get a hold of them. And how do you get a hold of the teachers? So we know that on a regular basis, this is important. When it comes to the home learning folks, it's going to be especially important because we're not going to physically see them on a regular basis. This includes technology training and technology support. So one of the things that we've gone through our training with our teachers is we remind them that just because a family has a computer and just because they have a printer and just because they have good internet connection, that doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to use that equipment for educational purposes. I mean, yeah, if a family, or parents or some of the older siblings have taken classes online, then yeah, maybe they would be able to kind of explain that to the younger kids. But if not, we're going to spend a lot of time on how to use the equipment, how to utilize the platforms. It's almost like focusing on, computer literacy for the first couple of weeks, maybe, and this may not be the same for every student, so they can differentiate the supports that are provided to the families. Some families may be more advanced, some families might need a little bit more time. Honestly, that's the beauty of the way that this is set up, is the independent work can allow for differentiated types of support and differentiated pacing. So it's not like we're gonna say, okay, everyone's gonna be on this same page this first week and hurry up and get started. That's not the case. This is also true for the face-to-face folks, because the face-to-face folks, the traditional folks, even though they're in school 1/3 of the time, that doesn't mean that in day 2 and day 3, that's kind of a day off. There is going to need to be some work done on the 2 days where students are not in school. And one of the examples that we've used is, on the day that they're in school, is the introduction of the skill or the reinforcement of the skill. If it's something that is a recurring lesson, it's covering the main parts of the content, and then showing the students what are the assignments that need to be done on the 2 days where the students are off. And we're putting together kind of like a pattern for students to follow, or routine in the traditional group. So if your first day is the lesson and you're introduced to content, then the second day would be, okay, reviewing the material, reviewing the content. If there's an assignment, starting the assignment. And then on the last day would be completing the assignment, continuing on with the practice in preparation for coming back to school on the 4th day. So it's really trying to set up that routine for home learning when they do 10 class, and then the 2 days when they're not in school. There's another question about internet support. So maybe Mr. Fernandez, right after me, can speak a little bit about the efforts with the governor's office about trying to get internet access to those families. But with the DOE, what we're trying to do is, for those families that still need internet supports, or would like to access the internet, or would like to access some equipment, we are opening what are called community learning centers in 20 of our schools. We're starting with 20, and if there's a higher demand, we may want to include more schools. But it's basically opening up select schools where we're going to open up the cafeteria or some open space where families can come and access the internet, access the Wi-Fi if they want to use their own computer, or access and utilize the computer equipment that's on campus at that time. We're looking at if it's an elementary school or high school, we're looking at 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock. If it's a middle school, because they end later, we're looking at 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock. And on weekends, we're estimating right now 10 o'clock to like 3 or 4 o'clock. And again, those times may change depending on usage, and maybe the locations might change depending on usage. But again, the intent is to open up the Wi-Fi signal so that people can access it. And if they need to use the equipment, they can use the equipment as well. And I just want to clarify that does not mean they have to go to their schools. Like if you're a high school student you don't have to go to your high school because we know that sometimes that's far. You can, if there's a community learning center in your village, you can go to any of the learning centers or any of the schools that are open as a community learning center. So for example, I live in the village of Agana Heights. I know that Agana Heights is going to be open up as one. So if I'm a high school student and I live in Agana Heights, I don't have to drive up to GW to use their computers. I can just go to Agana Heights Elementary and you know, utilize the computers there.
Sorry, Mr. Sanchez, one of the questions I did note was there was a question regarding supplies and if parents were going to be given $60 because that was there. If you want to touch a little bit on that.
Yeah, so the money is not directly given to the parents, but the schools will not be sending home a supply list. So the schools will be allotted $60 per student, and this is all the students, right? So they will be allotted $60 per student, and they will be able to order supplies for their students and their classrooms. So all the school supplies for the students will be covered through that funding. So yeah, so there will be no school supply list sent home from any school.
Sir, did you want to add more on the Lieutenant Governor's
Yeah, so a
efforts?
couple things. So following on the supply issue plus the uniform. So that was a decision, you know, the board made to suspend the uniform requirement as well. And the thought is that during the course of this pandemic situation, we understand a lot of our families are under pressure and under stress due to, you know, the issues in the economy and the impacts of the shutdown, and you know, just kind of looking ahead to the uncertainty about when the island will reopen. And because of that, even though we do encourage and we welcome, you know, uniforms, if our students or if our parents want to have their students wear the uniforms, we aren't requiring it, so that, you know, for those students who would normally have to purchase a new set, we're hoping that it won't be, that we can lessen the financial burden that is associated with having to purchase new uniforms. And similarly with the supplies for schools, the instructional supplies. So those are the two things that we tried to see if we could do to ease the burden of families trying to readjust and come back to get the kids back to school. In addition to that, we talked about technology. We are working with the governor's office as well. So we have federal funds that were given to us by the federal government that we're using to purchase more technology equipment and hopefully be able to shore up the internet access and the connectivity at the school site on our school campuses. Now, there's an additional pot of funding of about $12 million that the governor and lieutenant governor have been working with us to determine whether we can use that to help strengthen connectivity out in the villages. So we have a request for information that went out to our internet service providers to seek potential solutions and strategies to address connectivity out in the villages, in our homes. And that was due back in on the 15th. So we're gathering that information and now having conversations directly with those providers to clarify what might be some good approaches to helping our families who don't currently have good or reliable internet access. And then if that moves forward, then hopefully the governor's office can utilize some of the funding that they have to address those strategies. And those strategies are not just aimed at helping GDOE students, but we are working with the Guam Community College as well as the University of Guam together on that effort to see if we can support students at all levels. And so once we get more information about how we are moving forward, we will be glad to share that.
We currently have over 100 questions, and so our committee members are working diligently to respond to your questions. I know there were two people that had raised their hands. First person was Kiromi. Did she want to ask your question, Kiromi? Okay, how about Stacy? There was a Stacy who raised her hand. None.
There's an iPhone as well. That's
iPhone, would you like to ask your question?
My question is regarding the school. How are they maintaining like social distance? I know you guys said it, but is there going to be staff out there during like when the kids go out? Will there be always staff reminding them to stay apart? Do you have that staff? You know, my child goes to Price. If they were to go to school, you know how kids are. I'm just afraid that, you know, the staff won't be so diligent as to watching them. And what if they do come in contact with the kids? What if they do, you know, is there a certain plan that you guys have as far as keeping the social distancing? And then if they do keep social distancing, how are you guys going to maintain having the kids entertain each other? I mean, how are they going to grow socially if they keep that distancing?
So as far as physical distancing, it's a matter, and it's a struggle, I know, in the elementary level, because kids really like to be in close contact with each other. And so it's a matter of training our students, our teachers working with our students, and our administrators working with our students, and also at the parent level, informing our students that this is a new normal, and that, you know, they're not able to interact the way they used to. And so we have PBIS, positive behavior intervention supports, and I know you've probably seen it in your school, being safe, respectful, and responsible. And teachers can utilize PBIS in teaching what is appropriate and inappropriate behavior as far as physical contact. But definitely there needs to be teaching going in place on the teacher side and the administrator side, as well as the parent side. As far as supervision is concerned, we're working with now a third of the students on the campus. So at Price Elementary School, it is a fairly large school with maybe 700 students. You're going to see far less students on campus. Saying 1/3, however, you know, there are students and parents who have wished to have their students either homeschooled or online learning or hard copy learning. So that 1/3 population is going to be far less. It's going to be that Price Elementary School is going to look very different from the previous year with less amount of students. And so you have more active supervision with school aides as well as administrators working with the students during recess time, and obviously during lunchtime as they line up to get into classes. The sidewalks are going to be marked on where they can stand outside of their classroom as they enter their classroom, as well as in the cafeteria where they can sit in the cafeteria. And so students or the administrators and the staff will have their areas marked to ensure that physical distancing is taking place.
if I could just try to address your question directly, though. I mean, what we're trying to do here is really provide options for parents and provide options for students so that we can continue our mission of teaching and learning even while we're just emerging from this pandemic situation. Obviously there's an option to just completely shut down and not provide any options until we get back to normal. But we also know that it may never be, we may never get back to normal the way we know it. But if we all had to vote on what we would prefer for our kids, of course we would want them in school with face-to-face instruction. We would want them to play with each other. We would want to have that interaction that we know is important, the socialization that we know is important. Unfortunately, in this, at least this initial phase of reopening, we are still guided by the public health concerns and guidelines that come from the CDC and from public health. We're paying attention to the data. We're looking, we're listening, we're reading the reports, the science that's coming out about the likelihood that kids are able to be infected, to spread, to get sick. from the disease. Also whether there's a virus, be able to transmit the virus to adults, right? So all of these safety parameters are in place right now to try to limit and try to reduce the risk of that occurring. And again, with the lower numbers of students at school on any one day, that should help us, mitigate a lot of that risk. But of course, as the public health situation improves, we don't intend to just keep this in place just because we started it on day one. We would definitely like to, and we definitely plan to be adaptable and flexible as the public health situation improves. We can't just really turn on a dime and just change from day to day. It's going to take time to shift and make sure that we can work with all of our employees and our parents when the time comes. But for now, I just consider this basically our phase one. Again, this is how we plan to reopen the schools. We are giving parents the options, the various options, because we know there are some parents who just will not come back, but they don't want their students back at any, until there's a vaccine even. And so we want to make sure that we do listen and accommodate those parents and students, but also for those parents who do want to have their kids come to school for those very same reasons, to at least have some face-to-face opportunities, have some socialization as part of their instruction. And also we know that parents, eventually as the economy reopens, there's going to be the pressure for parents to have to go to work. Especially those who may not be working now and may have that flexibility, but down the road, we're expecting that there may be a situation where more and more, people in the household are going to have to go back to work. So, taking that into account, we hope to get to a situation where there's more days that the kids can, but right now this is our best kind of approach and the best set of ideas to try to at least reopen. And do it in a manner that can assure the safety of our employees and our kids. Let me just ask one, before we go to the next question, there are questions that I've seen that have to deal with students with disabilities and students who are part of our SPED program. So we're going to try to see if we can get to those questions here, but also I want you to know that we are going to have a similar session on Friday, a full session dedicated to SPED and to the issues that are impacting our families of students with disabilities. So you can continue to listen in on here, but if you'd like to join us on Friday, you're very welcome to, and we're going to dedicate that entire session to kind of hearing the concerns, trying to provide clarification, and get some input from our families of our students with disabilities. Okay, Erica.
Erica, I'm gonna answer a couple of questions kind of with one comprehensive answer. These are questions regarding the distance learning piece and availability of resources and videos and things like that. So the overall design and how the three models are approached overall is going to be developed by each school. And there's a very clear, very specific reason for that. This is not just the way Guam does it. I mean, this is how many of the states and many of the districts have had to do, because to coordinate this from a district standpoint, from a state standpoint, is very difficult and clearly is going to be ineffective. So what states and districts have done throughout the country is provide guidance to schools or groups of schools on how to address a lot of the different options that are offered to their students. Hawaii is doing this a similar way. California schools are doing this in a similar way because they give guidance to their school districts, and so many others that you see a lot of the reports that are coming out. Even on island, other different school groups have really tailored this to each school. So each school is kind of approaching it in a different manner. The difference with us, I think, not difference, but the way that we do it too is just because each school has to make these independent decisions, that doesn't mean our schools don't communicate with each other and collaborate. So our principals collaborate often, they communicate often, they share ideas. So what they do is they take the guidance from Central and they take it back to their school. They have to consider three main data points, three main pieces of information. One is, what is the distribution of students between each of the models? What percentage of students are online? What percentage of students are hard copy? And what percentage of students are face-to-face? Based on that information, they can take a look at the second data point, which is their teacher pool. what is their teacher skill level, how many are comfortable with online instruction, how many teachers may need particular accommodations, things like that, where they're looking at their faculty and communicating with their faculty on how, what would be the best way for them to approach their school's master schedule. And then the third factor is what are the courses that these particular students need. Now, in the case of elementary and middle, that would be mainly dependent on grade level because their grade levels pretty much dictate all the courses that they're going to take. In high school, it's a little different because obviously a freshman student may not take all the same classes as all the other freshmen, and same thing as sophomores and juniors and seniors. So there's going to be a mixture of different types of courses that they would need to take. When a school takes all of that information and lays out their master schedule, we've asked them to please collaborate with your teachers, discuss with your teachers what is the best way to approach this, and then they will determine how the online courses are divided up, how the hard copy students are divided up, and same thing with the face-to-face students. From there, that's where that scheduling would come in. So we're not scheduling it from central to say all the online courses are at this time. The schools would actually decide what time certain courses are streamed, or if they're doing that, which we don't totally recommend. I mean, we don't say don't do it, but if we have this vision of trying to stream every single class, no, that is absolutely not what we're going to do. There has to be some acknowledgement that there is going to be some video conferencing that's going to be necessary. We said at least once a week per course that the student is taking, with a maximum of 3 per course that a student is taking. But that would, again, the schedule for that would be determined at the school level. Now, another thing that's really interesting, and I like one of the questions that asks, can home hard copy students also access online material? The answer is yes. I mean, the idea is this new environment has allowed us to really pull the resources of all of our schools and all of our teachers. And one of the things that we're working very hard on is making sure that the 3 different models have an aligned curriculum. So we have what are called priority standard skills and topics for every course that is taught in the DOE. So it's not shot in the dark or not a random curriculum that is just kind of all over the place. It's very clear, very systematic. Every grade level, every course that's taught, we know what those priority skills are. And it wouldn't matter if they're in an online course, a hard copy course, or a face-to-face course. It's all of the same skills and content are being taught. Obviously, the strategies are going to be different because the access to the internet and so on is going to be different. But the idea is they will still have access to the same content and the same set of skills. Now, also, because that's true, it allows our teachers to not only collaborate within the school, we can collaborate across the district, where we are bringing in the teachers from all of the different content areas, and we're basically splitting up some of the assignments. We're saying, hey, everybody here, 7th grade, we all teach 7th grade world geography. Let's look at some of these units. Let's develop some of these content pieces together. Videotaping some of the lessons is part of the strategy. As you know, YouTube is, if I'm not mistaken, YouTube is also owned by Google. I think Google owns everything, right? But except Facebook. But Google, YouTube is part of the system. So we are going to encourage teachers who are willing and able to videotape some of their lessons or videotape their presentations, and they can upload those on YouTube so students can access them at different times. It doesn't matter which teacher it is, and we want the teachers to probably share some of those resources. And the good thing about it is, before, like towards the end of the school year, a lot of these ideas were theoretical. Like we were just thinking of some of these ideas and we didn't really have anything to show for it. Now we actually had the work that was done towards the end of the school year. If anybody took advantage of the home learning resource kit, for any students who are working in summer school work right now, we're getting a lot of parent engagement and a lot of student engagement with our summer school program, where people are emailing questions and things like that. And we also have our PBS University, where teachers have already videotaped lessons that are uploaded to YouTube and are broadcast on the PBS. So those 3 strategies that we talked about several months ago, we now have examples to pull from. And our intent is to take those same examples. We've learned a lot. Like, we had a lot of recommendations about how to improve it. We intend to use those recommendations to improve what we have for the beginning of the school year. And if the pace that we're working at is any indication of our potential over the next couple of weeks, I think we have a good footing, because we have a lot of teachers who are providing a lot of best practices that they can say, hey, this might improve this situation and so on, so that we are no longer, each teacher does not have to go through this struggle by themselves, as they have teams of teachers that they can collaborate with to provide better services and provide better supports to their students. So I looked at like 6 or 7 questions that were related to what I just responded to. So I hope that answers those.
So thank you, Joe. I mean, this has been a very active chat. So I think as somebody already responded from the committee, we will definitely be taking these questions and using them to update the parent frequently answered questions, and have that available after this week to send back out for parents to get those answers if it's not addressed here in this discussion, because I think there are over 200 questions already that we're tracking. And again, we also seem to be hitting our maximum capacity. I think it's 300, because we end up getting to 300. I know some of you may be getting booted out and rejoining. But I think if you don't have questions you need to answer here directly and want to watch on Facebook, then of course please feel free to do that as well. I just noticed that some people seem to be leaving and trying to rejoin. Okay, Erica, do you want to hit some of those questions for those who raised their hands?
Any questions from our audience? If not, I'll read some questions out that we have on our chat.
We have some who've raised their hands, I guess. There's an iPhone. You want to just go to that? The others, the questions that are in the chat, because they're written down, I'm going to hope we can be able to get back to them too and respond as well as part of the FAQs.
Right. There are a lot of busing questions. And so the bus schedule will not change. It shouldn't change that drastically from the previous school year. The only difference is that you're going to see less students on the school bus. And so we're currently working with DPW. They are consulting the Physicians Advisory Group on their max capacity on the school bus. And so we will be able to find out by Monday what their protocols are. In our initial conversation with DPW, they've indicated that they will not do temperature checks. So we're relying on parents to ensure that they do not send their child to school if they do have a fever. Students are required to have a face mask if they're going to ride the bus. So they will not be allowed on the school bus without a face mask. So it's important that parents work with their children to ensure that they have a face mask before they go to the bus stop. DPW had indicated that perhaps for the initial week that school starts, if there are students that do come on the bus without a face mask, they will probably provide for the first week, but it's not something that they are anticipating to provide for the rest of the school year. And so as far as cleaning is concerned, the bus will be cleaned after each stop, and then so it'll be cleaned after each student exits the bus, and when they go in for their next pickup. And so you may anticipate, because there's a low number of students on the bus, allowed on the bus, there may be multiple trips that bus drivers will be taking to transport the students to school. I know there was a question about temperature checks. I don't know if I answered that question. They will not be doing temperature checks. It will be at the school level where temperatures will be taken prior to, or as the students exit the bus, the students will be scanned to see if they do have a fever of 100.4 is considered a fever. And so I know there was a typographical error. It's not 104. That's definitely a fever, but 100.4.
Hello, good evening.
Yes.
I would like to ask regarding the, I may have missed it, regarding the lunch breaks or the recess for the students. How will that be handled? Will the students be at their own chairs eating their own snacks, or will the cafeteria be open? Can you
So
please educate us? Thank
sure
you.
thing. So there are some schools, such as LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, located in Tumuning. I know their students will be eating in the classrooms because the cafeteria is quite small. There are some schools who've opted to have their kinder and first grade students eat in the classroom. However, in the most part, most schools have opted to feed their students in the cafeteria, obviously with limited capacity with the 6 feet distancing. And so there are some pictures, I don't know if you've seen the pictures of student desks in the cafeteria instead of the regular long cafeteria tables, so that we can provide that 6 feet physical distancing. There are some schools who have put plexiglass on those cafeteria tables so that they can sit across each other, so that that plexiglass will protect the students from, as they eat, because obviously they're going to take off their mask when they eat. And so that would help protect the students. So as far as capacity, the administrators should have determined the capacity of the cafeteria and how many students are able to eat there at one given time. So they'll cycle the students given the capacity of the cafeteria. I believe on the CDC requirements or recommendations, they had indicated that the school administrators designate a place, if it's outside of the cafeteria, designate an area where students can eat outside, however, to address the physical distancing with the students. Relative to recess, with recess, students will be monitored by school aides and administrators during recess time to ensure that their masks are on and they're adequately physically distancing with each other as they are, during break or during lunchtime.
Thank you for that.
So
Sorry.
most of the, so at one time, all the middle schools and all the high schools had one lunch period. Now they have 2 to 3 lunch periods to address the physical distancing of the students. And then obviously in the elementary level, the primary level and the intermediate levels are separated so that could address the physical distancing of the students when they are doing participating in recess or lunch.
Thank you for your clarification regarding the recess and lunch setup. Just in addition to my inquiry, on the classroom setup, was GDOE funded to have plexiglass for each student sitting?
What we currently are doing is there aren't plexiglass for each student. However, there's the 6 feet distancing and students facing forward with a face mask. So,
okay.
students will have a face mask and they'll have the 6 feet distancing with a maximum capacity based on that 6 feet distancing.
What is the, sorry, sir. What is the maximum number of students per class approximately?
What we're seeing is that I know one middle school had 9 students as a capacity. So it depends on the size of the classroom. It could go up a little, but I would assume that it would be no more than 10 to 12 students in a classroom. But it's going to depend on the size of the classroom, and the administrators have been tasked to determine what the maximum capacity is based on the 6 feet distancing of each student.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Can we go to in the chat room? There are several, there's like 4 people who have their hands up. So there's an iPhone. There's a top list. There's someone with an iPhone who has their hand up. Do you still have a question? Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
I was wondering, for high schoolers, do we still have to do our service learning hours? And are we required, sorry, is it going to be Zoom video class or is it just going to be Google Class?
So for the service learning, we're going to be working with the legislature to waive that requirement again for this year, especially as it relates to graduation. So definitely we don't think it's going to be easy to have those service learning requirements met. So, but until we get that done, it's still in place, but we don't expect the legislature to oppose giving us that flexibility. So we'll continue to work with them to address that before the school year. Joe, on the question of Zoom as part of the,
Yeah, I'm sorry that my video is not on. I'm actually in the car and the light's on, so hopefully you can see me a little bit. But the two learning management platforms that we're using are Google Classroom and Moodle. Now, Google Classroom, as just to let you all know, that's a current system that we have running right now. So we are a Google school system, which means we avail of all the Google suites. We use the email, we use the chat features, we use the Google Classroom, Docs, and everything like that in our system. So students already have access through their email addresses. So that is the most straightforward system that we are using. We are also looking at implementing, and we're currently working with the University of Guam. We're very grateful for their support to implement Moodle. Moodle is what is used mostly at the university and the Guam Community College and a lot of colleges and universities throughout the country. So we think it's very beneficial for the high schools to also be utilizing Moodle as one of the learning management systems. Now, just to be clear as well, with regards to the teachers and how they're implementing it in their classrooms, the learning management system is good to help them organize a lot of the material and organize their work. But depending on the teacher, there may be phases that they would implement that. Like some of the teachers who are more skilled at Moodle or more skilled at Google Classroom, they might jump right into it on the first day. Versus some of the teachers who might be new to the system, they might be just focusing on email at first with a couple of Google Meets and communication back and forth with the students. So that's a big piece there. Is it really would depend on the teacher and how they kind of organize their classroom. But those will be the two platforms that we're going to be using. Since I'm speaking, can I also address two or three questions that were also on the chat related to grading and turning assignments in and so forth. So one of the things that we've noted to all of our teachers is that we are suspending the required implementation of standards-based grading, meaning we are no longer moving forward with the required implementation timeline this school year. Meaning we're not making people do it over the next couple of months unless they're already trained, unless they're already willing. Now, I want to also remind everybody that the standards-based grading strategies are currently allowable by policy. The current policy puts grading in the hands of the teacher at 100%. It is a very powerful policy. It's how the teacher decides to grade is really up to each individual teacher. The principal is also doesn't have a very strong say in that, and central office definitely doesn't have a very strong say in that. So it's very rare that you would see a principal or even central office overturn a teacher's grade simply because of the power of that policy. Now, with that said, that means any teacher who is willing and able and would like to utilize the standards-based grading strategies is able to do so in the current policy. And we believe that those strategies work very well with online instruction, home learning, as well as hard copy, as well as face-to-face, because standards-based grading focuses on the achievement of the skill. It focuses on the standard that the student is trying to learn. We know that we need to be flexible with deadlines, flexible with when a student can turn an assignment in, because there's so many different reasons why there's a challenge there. And because it has to be very independent, the distance learning piece for online work, the distance learning piece for home learning, that also has to be very independent. So standards-based grading is really perfect for that scenario, because it focuses on whether or not the students can actually perform the skill and actually perform, or actually demonstrate that they know the content in order for them to achieve a particular grade. Now, with that, I want to address one of the questions in another part of the chat that talks about how do we know that the student is the one actually doing the work? Well, remember earlier when I spoke about how the teachers really need to get to know the students and so forth? Part of that has to do with the consistency of the work and consistency of the assignments that are turned in. If you see, if students turn in a particular piece of work and there's a trend in their performance, and all of a sudden we see a perfect paper, and it's like, wow, the student like all of a sudden turned in a perfect paper, there may need to be more discussions with the students or with the parents about what what the assignment looks like, and probably provide other ways where the student can demonstrate learning. I do want to say this, and I want to ask you, if I hope that this doesn't offend anybody if I say it this way, but we do know that there are concerns that some parents or maybe even some older brothers and sisters might be doing the assignments and turning it in for them. And sometimes it's not just because they want to get the grade, or sometimes it's because if the child is struggling or the student is struggling, we feel like, oh man, I want to help you. Here, let me help you finish your work so you can turn it in. Well, that's obviously going to be a problem, because the motivation, especially when it comes to independent learning, especially for the home learning groups, the motivation cannot be simply completing the assignment, turning it in, and getting a grade. It may be that you can finish the assignment for your child, or the older brother or sister can finish the assignment, and then they turn it in, and it's possible that the teacher doesn't notice and the student does get the grade. Maybe it's a grade that they don't deserve, but the problem with that is it's really not going to help the student in the long run. The motivation has to be that, we want our children, we want our students to actually learn the material. If it's in the younger grades, the motivation cannot be to turn in the reading assignment so that the student can get a grade. The motivation has to be, I want my child to learn how to read. I want my child to learn how to do math. In the high schools, the motivation has to be, I want my child to be ready for college, ready for a career, ready for life. And it can't just be to get the grade. If we focus on just getting the grade, then we do run the risk of, promoting potential cheating and, other ways where the grades can be manipulated to someone.
Yeah,
so the motivation has to change in how that's approached.
If I could go ahead and interject here, though, and just let everybody know, let's just, just to be direct, this is a massive shift. I mean, this doesn't happen every day, where you go from 5 days of day-to-day instruction for all students and move into 3 models of learning. So as we go through it, well, I think what we can say is that assessments and grading, teaching and learning will take place, but they will take place under these 3 different models. And under the 3 different models, the way we assess student progress, how those grades will be issued, it's going to be a lot of work at the teacher level and at the school level to really adapt to the way we're delivering instruction. So there will be some benefits to how grading will be done, in terms of assessing what students are learning when they're not physically in the classroom. There'll be some benefits and there'll be some challenges. And I think what we can say is that, we will continue to work to make that to adapt, with our teachers and our administrators at the school level. But to be honest, it's going to take some time for everyone to feel comfortable, and we're going to have to continue communicating with parents as we go along in that endeavor. So it is a major shift, not just for us, but for many school districts across the country. So I don't want to just say that we have the answer, and after we train everybody next week or in a couple of weeks it'll take place. It'll be an ongoing learning process. So again, Joe's been very helpful in kind of helping guide everybody, but it really takes shape at the school level. So all the hard work that our administrators and teachers are putting in, it really be critical to really helping us smoothly transition into this new environment. Can we go to Michael Rudolph? Michael?
Hi, it's Michelle.
Okay, Michelle. Well, we have Michael. He's not responding, but go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, I'll just go on. I've got several questions to ask. I apologize. Earlier, I heard that a parent is able to change their decision on the type of model they chose. So if I did online and I feel that my child is it's just not working, I can go to the traditional. Is that correct?
I think what was said was that we are being flexible and allowing parents and students to change. However, as we get closer to the start of the school year and as we get into the school year, we're going to ask that any of those changes be done in a way where it'll allow for a smooth transition from one model to another. So as Deputy Sanchez was suggesting that, once we get into the school year, there might be a conversation about waiting to the end of the grading period to make that change versus, changing all of a sudden on one day. So for those who missed the deadline or still, at this point, we are allowing, parents to contact the schools and make those changes now. But again, once we get settled, once we start scheduling students and we move into the school year, those changes will probably need to happen at an appropriate time to allow for that smooth transition to take place.
Okay, which I understand because I know this is all new to us, and I keep hearing a lot of independent work on the child who's going to be doing homeschooling online, which is all new to my child. And so I'm just trying to think how that will work for her. And if it doesn't work for her, I definitely will have to go to the traditional. And with that said, is there going to be a capacity of amount of people who can change to traditional? I mean, because right now 60% online and 40% traditional. And after that time period, after that grading time period, if people want to switch over to traditional, will we be rejected because there's too many people now going traditional? I mean, will we be seeing something like that?
So good question. Right now, it's not an issue because there's, as you noted, and as we noted, the vast majority of our parents want to have their kids at home. When we get to that point and there are more students who are requesting to go to that face-to-face learning, depending on the public health guidance at that time, if we're in PCOR 3 or PCOR 4, if there is public health guidance that continues to require physical distancing or limiting the occupancy of any facility, that will be the determining factor regarding our capacity to accommodate all of those who do want to come back. So we're not there at this point. I mean, it's totally an opposite situation, but again, what you're raising is something that we're thinking about as well. As we go along, there may be some capacity issues that will limit the number of students who can come back physically, and we'll just have to continue to work on those scenarios as we plan ahead. So thank you for raising that. We don't have the answer at this particular point.
Thank you.
So Michael, Michael, do you want to go ahead? Because we skipped over you. I think you were on mute. Do you want to go and ask your question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Sure.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So earlier in the discussion, it was noted during the survey that there was a very small number of students that actually wanted to do the face-to-face. Is that correct?
Correct. About 35% overall from the school system for those who've responded. And we have about 17,000, 18,000 responses already.
So is it not possible for certain schools to be designated face-to-face traditional 5 day a week for those students that want to go there?
Yes, well, at this point, we're still waiting to gather the remainder of those registrations. And again, what we're planning to do is open, as we indicated, based on the proposed model. But we did have that discussion, at some point, and maybe whether it's earlier or later, in the school year, we do anticipate the possibility that we will be able to accommodate more students or modify the way we're addressing the models of learning to accommodate more face-to-face instruction. What we wanted to do was start off conservatively with safety in mind, and then as we got into the school year, make the adjustments as we were able to do so based on the public health situation and what we were observing with regard to the preferences of our parents, students, and how the online and face-to-face instruction was going. What we what we certainly didn't want to do was get out too far ahead of ourselves and try and then have to reverse ourselves and then go back and forth. It's easier if you're just talking about one school at a time, but when you're dealing with the district as a whole, we wanted to make sure there wasn't too much chaos in how things were moving forward and changing. So, so if you'll allow us, what we want to do is start off with the recommended approach, but we're keeping in mind that if we can be adaptable and flexible as things change, and as we learn more about whether there is increased demand for face-to-face, and if the public health situation allows for it, we certainly are going to want to consider all those options as well. At this point, what we're trying to do is not just, we all want our kids back to school, and we all are concerned about their safety, but we also want to be very sensitive to the parents out there as well, who have by far let us know that the safety concerns that are out there are dwarfing all the other issues that we still care about. And so I think as everybody gets back into phase one, we'll get settled, and then hopefully we'll feel comfortable and public health situation will improve, and we can try to get more students back. It's just a matter of getting into it, seeing how it works, and then watching as circumstances change.
Okay, thank you for that. I do have one short question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
For contact tracing with the students, has public health given you any sort of concrete policy as to whether or not they will directly engage with the student, or will they directly engage with the parent first before communicating with the student for contact tracing?
Julieta's online, sir.
Julieta Kadani is our chief nurse. It's probably better for her to go ahead and answer, since she's familiar with the contact tracing protocols, not just for this, but for other communicable diseases. Julieta, are you there? Can you answer that question?
Yes, sir. Hi, happy day, everybody. So yes, if we do contact tracing, or if there is a case in the school setting, then public health will definitely inform the parents first. But it's also a reportable disease, so public health will also inform us at the school level so that we are also aware. And then we work hand in hand with you as the parent, and of course our school, to make sure that we follow our protocol. Since there was a lot of questions, we initiate the contact tracing. That means where have that student been, which class, the teacher. We will look at where did they have lunch, all those areas, so we can identify who've been part of the contact. Once we identify the students and the employees, then they will not be allowed in school for 14 days. And they can only return back to school once they've got their testing and once public health have cleared them. And then we'll also work with public health on how long the school will be closed so that we can clean and disinfect as well. I hope that answers your question and some of the concerns. What do we do when we have a positive person in school?
Thank you very much. Will those protocols be made public and disseminated to the parents?
Definitely, we are, it's written already, it's part of our handbook, and we will definitely share that with the parents as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank
you. I'm good. Thanks, Mr. Fernandez.
Thank you, Michael.
There's a Karen, sir. Karen?
Ma'am, I already raised my answer earlier. You already answered me. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. So we're at 7:35.
So, it's 7:35, and if you have any further questions, we'll allow we'll keep the chat open for a few more. Please type your question in there, and what we'll do is we'll gather that. I know the committee's been trying to answer them as we've gone along, but what we'd like to do is get all those questions, and those, especially the ones that we haven't answered, and we will be committing to updating our frequently asked questions by the end of the week, so we can provide that back to parents and try to make sure we cover all the bases in terms of the major questions and clarifications that are needed.
Yeah, Mr. Fernandez, can I also note too we do also have some lingering questions from the last session. I know Erica and I, when we gave our email addresses, we got a bunch of questions. We tried to answer as many as we can. Some we didn't get to yet. So we're including all of those questions together in a comprehensive set of frequently asked questions. So we'll make sure that we get those back out.
I don't know if we exceeded the number of chats, but I'm not able to put my email address down, nor Joe Sanchez. So my email address is ercruz@gdoe.net. And Joe Sanchez's email address is jsanchez@gdoe.net. And that's JSANCHEZ.
Yeah, thank you.
GDOE.net. And mine is Erica, ERCRUZ@gdoe.net. And if you miss it, you can look up our email address on our GDOE website.
And absolutely, this session again was streamed on Facebook, and so it will stay on Facebook for those who want to go back and who weren't able to join at the beginning of the conversation. So with that said, again, we have another session tomorrow for our Southern families, and then we will have a dedicated session to our families of children, students with disabilities on Friday. So again, once we gather all that information, we will update our frequently asked questions so that we can provide clearer responses and in writing for the benefit of everybody. So with that said, I just want to say thank you all again for joining us. Very active session. We had about 300 people online on Zoom and another 50 to 100 on Facebook. So definitely a lot of interest, and I hope we were able to answer a lot of questions tonight, and we'll continue to do so as we move forward. So with that said, thank you everybody, and have a wonderful night. Be safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the info.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.